Hello, everyone. I am Jackie Tanner Tarleton, co-founder of Plant Chicks, and I am very humbled and grateful that Dr. Loomis has agreed to come on and do this interview with us. So let me read Dr. Loomis's bio, and then we will dive into this amazing discussion. So James F. Loomis, Jr., MD, MBA, received his medical degree from the University of Arkansas, where he was elected to the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Medical Society. That's a lot to say. He graduated with honors. Kudos. He subsequently completed his internship and residency in internal medicine at Barnes Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri. In addition, Dr. Loomis received an MBA from the Olin School of Business at WashU in St. Louis. He's board certified in internal medicine, and he's also completed the certification program in the plant-based nutrition from Cornell University, which the other co-founder, Marcia Prince and Plant Chick, she's also done that same certification. Dr. Loomis served as a team internist for the St. Louis Rams football team and the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team, as well as a tour physician for the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Before coming to the Barnard Medical Center, he practiced internal medicine at St. Luke's Hospital in St. Louis, where he was also the director of prevention and wellness. He was on the clinical faculty of the Department of Internal Medicine at WashU School of Medicine while not practicing medicine. And he is now currently the medical director at Barnard Medical Center, which is affiliated with Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, if you guys haven't heard of that one. While not practicing medicine, Dr. Loomis enjoys reading history books, cooking, and teaching plant-based cooking classes. He also enjoys running, biking, and swimming. Signed up for his first full Ironman. Kudos to you on that one. And has completed numerous half marathons, and triathlons. Whoo, we did it. All right. So, Dr. Loomis, can you tell us a little bit about your medical training just to lead up and let people know what you went through?
Sure. Well, you know, like almost all physicians today, you know, in medical school, you know, we really learned about how to take care of chronic disease. And we learned that, you know, what killed people was things like heart disease and cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's disease, which is still true today in some way. And we learned how to take care of those chronic diseases. And for the first probably 25 years of my practice, you know, that's how I practiced medicine. You know, we didn't really learn anything about nutrition or the role that lifestyle played. You know, any nutrition education I got was self-taught, and it was self-taught though based on like the U.S. dietary guidelines and the food pyramids that came out and things like that. So, you know, when I talk to patients about healthy eating, it was about, you know, lean meat and low-fat dairy and, you know, fruits and vegetables, and you could have some ice cream, just not too much in moderation. And, you know, patients would come in, you know, we can not take very good care of ourselves for a while before it catches up. And, you know, it used to be in your 40s and so, but nowadays, you know, I'm seeing, you know, we're seeing 20-year-olds, even teenagers with type 2 diabetes. So that unhealthy lifestyle starts to catch up. But what, you know, the way my practice, the way I took care of patients, the patient would come in, they're 40, they've got high blood pressure. I might talk to them about lifestyle, but the conversation would go something like this. You need to lose some weight, cut back on your salt, exercise more, but implicit in my message was, I know you can't do that, right? So I'm gonna give you these pills. And the pills work great, right? And they'd come back in 6 months or a year and their blood pressure is good, but now their cholesterol's high, right? So we would iterate that again. And then they would come back in another 6 months or a year and their blood pressure and cholesterol is good, but now they got type 2 diabetes. And then, you know, next comes, you know, your heart attack or your stent, which is delayed, or prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, you know, then Alzheimer's disease. Now we've run out of things to do, so you get to go to the nursing home. And that's what, you know, so I thought I was practicing healthcare in that system, right? But if you think about that, that's not healthcare, right? That's sick care. And in fact, that's how I that's how I approached my own personal health. You know, if you would have asked me 7 or 8 years ago if I ate healthy, I would have said, sure, I don't eat that many cookies, and I don't eat that many donuts, and I don't eat that many cheeseburgers, and I don't eat, you know, that much ice cream. And in some ways, those were true statements. the disconnect in retrospect was, Monday the nurses bring cookies in the office, and Tuesday there's donuts in the doctor's lounge, and Wednesday I go out for a cheeseburger, and Thursday it's someone's birthday, so there's a little cake and ice cream, and Friday rolls around and I'm patting myself on the back because I didn't eat many cookies this week, right? And so I could kind of out-exercise that lifestyle. And in 2010, in the fall of 2010, I tore my meniscus playing with my dog, and I had to wait 3 or 4 months to get surgery because I was really busy, and then I didn't do the rehab afterward. And next thing I know, I started to gain a lot of weight, and I slowly but surely became a patient. And the doctors I was seeing in St. Louis were some of the best doctors in the world, people I trained with, but they treated me just like I treated my patients. Not once did anyone ever have a meaningful conversation about my diet or my lifestyle, and nor did I even think about it, right? I mean, I didn't even think about, well, what should I, what's a healthy diet, right? So first thing that happened is I developed atrial fibrillation, which is irregular heartbeat. It turns out, so I had a cardiologist, and he gave me some pills, and it turns out the AFib was from sleep apnea. So I got to get a sleep doctor who gave me a really sexy CPAP machine to wear at night. And then I saw my internist, and my cholesterol was through the roof, and he wrote me out a prescription for cholesterol medicine, and I had borderline diabetes. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck, And I knew, I knew what the future was, right? Because in this sick care system that I was being cared for in, and that I cared for patients within, we add years to our patients' life, but we take away life from their years in that process. We wait for our patients to get sick. We give them drugs that are expensive and they have side effects. We allow them to accumulate the disability that comes from a sedentary lifestyle, or obesity, or cancer, or heart disease, or whatever. And slowly but surely, I was 52 at the time. Slowly but surely, I knew where this was headed, right? This pre-diabetes was going to be diabetes, and this borderline blood pressure was going to be blood pressure pills. And that what the future held was, not only pills for my cholesterol, but eventually, type 2 diabetes, blood pressure, on and on and on, not to mention the irregular heartbeat and the CPAP machine. So I'm laying on the couch one day. I had this prescription for Lipitor, statin, in my wallet. I'm flipping through Netflix, and I come across Forks Over Knives. So I had never heard of it. I knew what a vegan was at the time, but to me, a vegan was someone who wore tie-dye and Birkenstocks and hugged trees and smoked weed. And in retrospect, again, I think we all have a lot of this cognitive dissonance about where our food really comes from. But this idea that food could be medicine just deeply resonated. It was like, wow, it can't be this simple, can it? And so literally, I came back to the office the next day, and I was on the faculty at WashU, and so I got online, the medical library, downloaded some of the primary research. I ordered, the China study, and literally overnight, just about decided to give this a try, as opposed to taking these medicines. So overnight, I adapted a whole food, plant-based diet. The result was a miracle, really. And then the other thing I dedicated was to get my knee rehabbed, which I had not done initially. So, 3 months later, this was July of 2011. Again, I was 52 years old. 3 months later, I had lost 30, 40 pounds. My cholesterol dropped from 260 to 150. My sleep apnea went away. The AFib went away. My allergies went away. My exercise-induced asthma went away. And by 1st of January 2012, my knee was in good enough shape to start exercising again for the first time really seriously in probably 15 years. And I ran 3 half marathons that year, did a half Ironman the next year, ended up losing about another 20, 30 pounds. So lost in the 50, 60 pound range total, total. But what, besides this kind of personal health transformation that I underwent, again, almost miraculous, it also completely transformed the way I thought about healthcare and what it meant to practice medicine and what healthcare really was. And, to practice true healthcare where we add years to our patients' life and sustain life in their years. We all got to die, right? But Kim Williams, the past president of the American College of Cardiology, says, we all got to die. You just don't want it to be your fault, right? And take the I out of die, right?
Right.
And so how do you do that? Well, you focus on root cause. And what's the root cause of every single one of those diseases that I learned about in med school, right? Heart disease and cancer, and most cancers anyway, breast cancer, colon cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. What's the root cause? The food we put in our mouths. It's how much we move. It's how we cope with stress, how we recover from stress through sleep, and the environmental toxins we expose ourselves to, primarily tobacco and alcohol. Although I think increasingly concerned about pesticides and herbicides and heavy metals and antibiotic residues and hormone residues in our food. And when we focus on those things, we flip the model upside down. That's when we can practice true healthcare. And the other interesting thing that I realized not that long ago, actually, is that, if you think about in the modern healthcare system, or sick care system, we'll call it, right? Mm-hmm. So where does the locus of control of a patient's health lie in that system? It lies with the system, right? Mm-hmm. Who decides, oh, your blood pressure's high, here's some pills, right? Oh, your cholesterol's high, here's some more pills. And what pills are they? And when do you need to get your colonoscopy? And when do you need a stress test? And when do you need bypass? And what kind of chemo? The system does, right? Where should the locus of control of an individual's lie? With you, right? And what do you have control over, right? Food that goes in your mouth, stress, exercise, movement, on and on. And so really what I came to realize that my mission these days as a primary care physician in many ways is about transferring the locus of control from me back to the patient. And it's interesting that many patients it's such a, no one has ever come at them with that. It's like this unique kind of idea. And some of them are actually resistant to it until you help them truly understand, what a gift that is to give and how empowering it can be when we in fact do take control of our health and part of it's education, part of it's behavior, change and things like that. So anyway, that's my story.
That's an incredible story. So Dr. Loomis, let's break that down a little bit more. I want to hear a little bit like how the conversation with your patients has changed since like pre-211 to like post-211, and then also now it may have even changed even further since coming to Barnard Medical Center. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I tried to practice more of lifestyle medicine practice in St. Louis, and it was very, very different. St. Louis is a great place to get sick, right? But there was no plant-based dietitians. I'd have a big conversation with a patient. We'll get to how I address that in a second. But I'd have a big conversation with a patient, and then send them to see a dietitian. The dietitian is talking. I'll tell, oh, you got to drink milk to get your calcium and meat to get your protein, on and on. I even had diabetes endocrinologists accusing me of malpractice.
Wow.
I would have type 2 diabetics that are on insulin and metformin, and their A1C is 6.5, and everyone's patting themselves on the back about what a great job we're doing controlling their diabetes, which even at an A1C of 6.5 leaves patients with tremendous residual risk for complications like neuropathy, et cetera.
Wow.
And I would, give them the resources and coach them through transitioning to mainly to a plant-based diet. And they go see their diet, they'd lose 30, 40 pounds. They go see the diabetes specialist, and the diabetes specialist would say, wow, you look great. What are you doing? I went on a plant-based diet. Well, how much insulin are you taking? Oh, I stopped my insulin. Well, who told you to do that? Well, my internist. Well, you need to get a new internist.
Ooh.
Because that's malpractice. If he's telling you can reverse type 2 diabetes, that's not true, and you can't do it, and he's a quack, and on and on. And then their blood work comes back, and their A1C is 5.5, which is normal. And the irony of that was they didn't need a new internist; they didn't need their endocrinologist anymore. So, when I heard about the Barnard Medical Center, and I was very familiar with Dr. Barnard's work, I, on a whim almost, applied for the job. And I wasn't looking for a job. I heard through a Facebook doctors vegan group that they were looking for a medical director, and on a whim sent in a resume. And 2 weeks later, I had a new career and relocated here in December 2015. And we opened in January 2016. So the approach I take with patients is pretty straightforward. And the conversation does not start out, you know, we don't talk about being vegan or even plant-based. What I talk about is you know, what does it mean to be healthy, right? And it's, you know, this idea that we way overcomplicate health, right? And if you think about human physiology, human behavior, human, our metabolism, our nutritional needs, you know, that's really based in our evolutionary biology, right? So what are we designed to do? Well, like any living creature, you know, we evolved to try to hang around long enough and find a mate and pass on our DNA. And the two primary tasks we had to be able to accomplish historically for that to occur was the ability to go find food when we were starving and not be someone else's food when they were starving. And that's where our stress came from. And we had to react to that stress through physical activity because we had to go gather and hunt food or run away from a fight leopard. So we have adrenaline, which gets us ready to exercise, and cortisol, which helps us recover. And assuming we survived, that's when we'd rest, recover, and refuel. And we refuel with where we could find around us on a given day. And that cycle of stress, activity, recovery is how we build resilience. You know, that's how if you train for a marathon or a triathlon or you lift weights, that's how you get stronger and faster and smarter and et cetera. Now you fast forward to the modern world, you know, we don't do any of that anymore, right? I mean, think about how much energy you have to spend each day to get more energy. Well, it's very little. You know, you push a cart down the aisle at the grocery store, you give your order to the waiter, you call Uber Eats, they'll bring it to your house.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
The kind of energy and nutrients we consume bear little to no resemblance to what we're really supposed to be eating. And I'll come back to that. You know, we don't face stress and threat physically anymore. We run and fight emotionally. And we worry about a lot more stuff than starving to death and getting by leopards. We worry about jobs and money and relationships, and in DC here, especially politics and weather and traffic. And then we compound it by not adequately rest and recovering. And we over-caffeinate, we over-alcohol, we don't get enough sleep. The sleep we get is not restful. So over time, it's not resilience we develop, it's exhaustion, mental, physical, hormonal. And so arguably 90% of the cause of 90% of the problems I see here every day, you know, again, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, breast cancer, colon cancer, autoimmune disease, depression, anxiety, insomnia, all of it is fundamentally rooted in this evolutionary mismatched lifestyle. Right? So what does it mean to be well? Well, we need to get back to leading a lifestyle more in line with the lifestyle we're designed to lead. So what does that mean? Well, we have to become well in 3 separate but highly connected domains and limit our exposures to environmental toxins. And that's primarily tobacco and alcohol. Although, again, I think there's increasing concern about hormones and pesticides and herbicides and things like that. But the 3 primary domains are physical wellness, and we achieve that by movement. You know, we need to move 30, 45 minutes most days, and a couple days a week, replicate picking stuff up and moving it out of the way. We need to be emotionally well, and that's about stress and how we cope with stress and recover from stress through sleep. And we need to be nutritionally well, which means we got to eat what we're supposed to eat and stop eating what we're not supposed to eat. But these things are highly connected. Again, we don't realize how connected they are. When we overstress and underexercise, you know, we get the same stress response. When you're worrying about a project at work, your brain thinks you just saw a leopard. And so when we disconnect the hormonal response from stress, from the physical response, that adrenaline now turns against us. So what happens? Our blood pressure goes up. We get anxiety. We get insomnia. Our mind's racing around at night, worrying about what we didn't get done today and what we have to do tomorrow. That cortisol, which is its job is to raise our blood sugar in the short term, to turbocharge the engine. It also helps us heal. That's why we give cortisone shots. But it also stimulates our appetite and preferentially stores what we eat as fat in that post-stress period because we're trying to refill the gas tank as soon as possible to get ready for the next leopard. But again, when we overstress and underexercise, now that cortisol turns against us, right? It contributes to, you know, elevated blood sugars, type 2 diabetes, obesity, cholesterol, etc. Fundamental connection between diet and exercise. I would imagine, you know, no one here, you know, parks their car in the garage for a year and puts gas in 5 times a day, right? We you know, without driving it, you know.
No.
If you're emptying your gas tank, if your gas tank holds 15 gallons, you don't put in 30, right? And you certainly don't put in diesel gas in moderation if your car's running on regular unleaded, right? Yet
I love this analogy. This is going to be good.
We take much better care of our cars than we do of ourselves, right? So you know, most of what I do is fixing people's cars because they keep putting the wrong gas in it, right? So now I think most of us we need to move around and not stress out and get a good night's sleep. Operationalizing that can be difficult because we do live in a stressful world. It just needs to become a priority. The nutrition piece, though, is the black hole. right?
Mhm.
$1 million question, what kind of gas we'd be putting in our cars. And again, there's so much misinformation. I would even go so far as to say is malinformation, people telling us things which may not be true, because they want us to buy whatever they're selling. We overcomplicate nutrition. First of all, there's no such thing as a paleo diet, right? But there were certainly ancestral dietary patterns. And in temperate climates, where our ancestors came from, our ancestors were not hunter-gatherers, right? We were gatherer-hunters.
Mhm.
Much easier to go gather calories than it was to hunt down big animals. But what did we gather? We gathered whole food, unprocessed, plant-based sources of energy, right? There was no white flower tree or canola oil bush or Dr. I mean, we were not designed to put these highly processed grains and highly processed sugars and highly processed edible oils and artificial sweeteners and food dyes and food additives on and on into our gas tank, right? We're not designed to use dairy products other than our mother's milk, and there's lots of evidence around that. I mean, first of all, we had to domesticate other mammals to get access to their milk. And that didn't occur till about 8,000 years ago. Now that seems like a long time, but that's a few seconds at best if you look at through the long lens of human evolution. Now we did eat meat historically. It just wasn't very much. And the meat we ate, though, it came from animals that ate what animals were supposed to eat, not cows and pigs and chickens, and now even fish stuffed full of corn, antibiotics, and hormones. Now, I think you could argue that our ancestors did have a survival advantage to having that concentrated animal fat and protein to get big and strong and get away from the leopard before they died of some infectious disease when they were 30. And through sanitation and antibiotics, we've tripled our lifespan. So we've unmasked all these chronic problems that our ancestors never had to worry about. They didn't have to worry about, if I overconsume red meat, am I going to get diabetes or breast cancer? Because they were already dead, right? Mm-hmm. You take one step further back and think about the environmental consequences of how we raise those animals today and the impact it has on climate change and land use and water use. And again, these environmental toxins, not to mention how we treat the animals. I think you can make a very strong argument, if you're not starved for calories, that a whole food plant-based diet is the most healthful diet for an individual's health, planetary health, and obviously animal health. Now, is a piece of salmon every now and then going to kill you? No, it's not. Is there something in salmon you can't get from plants? No, there's not. Are you exposing yourself to mercury? And if you're eating farm salmon, which is really a toxic brew of chemicals and algicides and pesticides, yes, you are. Is it enough to hurt you? Who knows? Is it good for marine ecosystems and its salmon fisheries? Definitely not. So that's the conversation. That's the exact what that story I just told you. That's the exact conversation I have with my patients, just trying to help them understand about what it really means to be healthy, and that the obvious conclusion, I think, should be, from a nutrition side, it's a whole food plant-based diet. And I don't use the word vegan. I don't push it. I mean, I just let people know, if you really and truly want to be healthful, then this is the way to accomplish that. So.
Beautiful. Thank you for that incredible answer. And I love that that's the conversation that you have with your patients. So at Bernard Medical Center, do you guys also do some classroom teaching, right? So
right.
If I'm a patient, I'm coming in to see you, I might have like that 10 or 15 minute interaction, but aren't there also other interactions that I can have with other people?
There are. And so, just to put that into context, change is hard, right?
Yeah.
And I think something we ignore around nutrition, dietary change especially, is the fundamental fact that eating is a learned behavior, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's by evolutionary design as well. If you had to think about walking, right? I have to contract my quad, flex my hip a minute. You would have walked right past the ripe berries and you wouldn't have seen the leopard and you wouldn't have lasted very long. So our brains evolved a mechanism when we habituate a task, whether it be walking or eating or in the modern world driving even, very quickly our subconscious brain takes over. And that allows our conscious brain to continue to scan the environment for opportunity and threat. But since we're Stone Agers in the fast lane, that doesn't work out so well anymore. So all of your food preferences, things you like to eat, things you don't like to eat, triggers to start eating, triggers to stop eating, and whether they be environmental, emotional, that's stuff you learned a long time ago, right? Mm-hmm. And so, if you go to a restaurant and white bread is not healthy, right? And if you go to a restaurant and the environmental trigger you learn to eat white bread is waiter puts it on the table. At that moment in time, you don't have to think about eating the bread. You have to think about not eating the bread. And if you don't think about not eating the bread because you're tired of thinking, you had a busy day, you're out with friends, family, you're on a date, whatever, what happens to the bread? Eat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like free food. You ask people, how are you doing with your diet? Oh, I don't understand. I'm not losing weight, or my sugars aren't a lot better. I went to a restaurant last night and had a quinoa kale salad, but what's not on the list? The 4 or 5 pieces of bread you had slathered in olive oil waiting for the food to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the workplace, for example, is the worst for all this, right? Now you can change it. Driving is another example, right? You move to London and you want to drive. What do you got to do? Learn how to drive on the other side of the street, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it takes 3 to 6 months every time you get in that car to think about what side of the road am I on? Which side of the pedestrians coming from? Where, how do I go through the roundabout? And then one day you get in the car and that's how you drive. And if people said, do you miss driving on the wrong side of the street? You would say, no, that's a silly question. I don't drive that way anymore, right? And you certainly wouldn't drive on the wrong side of the street in moderation, now would you? Because you would only have a moderate number of head-on collisions and run over a moderate number of pedestrians, right?
Another great analogy. This is awesome.
Right. And in fact, every time you eat a piece of bacon or a bowl of ice cream, you are running over the endothelial lining of your heart, your pancreas, your colon cells, your breast cells, your prostate cells, on and on. Now, the issue is this, though. Driving on the wrong side of the road in a car, the consequences are immediate and fairly catastrophic, potentially. Driving on the wrong side of the road nutritionally, it might take decades to manifest. So how do you stay focused long enough, that 3 to 6 months, to facilitate learning how to drive on the other side of the street? Because that's what this is really all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So another analogy for you, right? I liken that to pushing, and this comes from my own personal experience, and then also coaching literally hundreds of patients through this process. It's like pushing a snowball over the top of a mountain, okay? If you get the snowball over the top, you don't have to push anymore. You start to lose weight, you feel better, you get off these drugs, you have more energy, you like the way you look in clothes. I mean, everything just gets better and better and better. The hard part is getting the snowball to the top. And some people's mountains are really tall and the road is really steep. So there's 3 fundamental things that have to happen to help people get the snowball to the top of the mountain. So the first is you got to help them find a reason to push.
Mm-hmm. Find the reason why.
Right. And we talk about this the wrong way in the medical community, because we come out of a paradigm of fear, right? Quit smoking, you're going to get lung cancer. Get your blood pressure down, you're going to have a stroke. Get your cholesterol down, you're going to have a heart attack. Get your sugars down, we're going to cut your foot off, whatever. People know that stuff already, right? And it really doesn't facilitate long-term change. So a different way to frame that is asking a different question. Why would it be important for you not to have those things happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I even will do an exercise. Well, I'll get 5 pieces of paper, say, and write down heart attack, stroke, cancer, whatever. And so I want you to go home and write down the top 5 reasons you don't want these things and come bring them back to me next week. And what comes back is 1 piece of paper, right? I want to be around for my kids, my grandkids, my spouse. I want to sail around the world when I retire. I want to play the top 100 golf course. Whatever it is you want to be doing in the next, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that's the reason to start pushing the snowball today. The second thing is you got to figure out how to lower the slope of the road and the height of the mountain. So this is where the classes come in. And that's honestly reflecting on what's going to make this hard. What are your barriers to change? Some of them are knowledge gaps. I don't know. I don't know I don't know how to read labels. I don't know how to cook quinoa. I travel. I'm on a budget. I don't have a lot of time. I'm an emotional eater, whatever it might be. And so we've built kind of a toolkit here to help patients accomplish, to lower the height of the mountain and slope of the road. And so we have free classes we offer our patients. They run every 12 weeks, once a week for 12 weeks, and they start over. And they cover a wide variety of topics, from educational things to science about plant-based diet and diabetes, to how to read labels, to how to eat out, to how to overcome food addiction and emotional eating, things like that. We also offer one-on-one. We have our own dietitians here. So we offer one-on-one medical nutrition counseling for people who need a little more intense. And then we have a network of plant-based, or plant-friendly at least, mental health professionals and health coaches for people that need a little more intervention, if you will. And then the last thing that needs to happen, which I really do think is as important as the other 2, is you really need to recruit as many people as you can to help you push the snowball. So creating a social network around change, whether it be friends and family members and coworkers, to online communities. For example, Forks Over Knives, as you may know, has a closed Facebook group which is moderated, so it keeps the trolls out. You know, they have 250,000 people.
Wow.
So I guarantee you, whatever you're, you know, if you want to celebrate a success, or you have questions about a struggle you're having, there you will get all the support you need in a community like that. Our classes actually provide that as well. When we get feedback about our classes, you know, the knowledge transfer obviously is very important, the education piece. But the other thing patients love is that sense of community that creates, because the first 10 or 15 minutes of the class, we go around we go around the room and ask everybody, you know, what were your successes this week? What are you struggling with this week? And then it's kind of a group solving the problem. And you know, spontaneously, many of the classes have started potlucks, monthly potlucks or quarterly potlucks and things like that. So that was a long answer to about the classes, but I just wanted to put into context that it's not just the classes. It's not just, it's really
it's a combination of all of it.
It's about systematically thinking about how do you navigate behavior change, which is something, you know, we do a great job about telling people what to do, and we do an okay job about telling people why to do it, but we don't do a great job telling people how to do it, right? And
I think we're really getting better at the how.
We are.
With medical practices such as Barnard Medical Center, PRM, and a lot of these other plant-based medicine or plant-based lifestyle medicine physicians.
Right. So, you know, right after I went plant-based was the very first International Plant-Based Healthcare Nutrition Conference.
Yeah.
And it was in Naples, Florida. It's about 250 people there.
Wow, it's grown so much.
I've been to all 6 now, right? And this year they sold out 1,200 people, right?
Amazing, yeah.
American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I happen to be on the board of directors of ACLM. First meeting I went to 4 years ago, there was maybe 400 people. Again, sold out this year. So you were exactly right. I think that there is a growing understanding of the fundamental importance of lifestyle medicine. And what's also interesting about that, I think, is that, and I alluded to this in very early on in our talk, in our discussion, you know, if you look at burnout rates in primary care physicians, it's one of the highest in any specialty, you know. And the reason is because we never do anything for anybody, right? We're just playing whack-a-mole with their health. We never truly make anyone better. We might make them better. We make them just for the short term by getting their blood pressure down with some pills. But, you know, up pops another problem because we never address the fundamental causes of these chronic diseases. And when you learn about lifestyle medicine, you finally realize that, in fact, you know, it empowers you to fundamentally change people's lives in such a powerful way. It's reinvigorating. And so many physicians, when they discover lifestyle medicine, it really does open up this whole kind of, you know, it's like this awakening, if you will, for their professional careers. It's really amazing to see.
It's really powerful, and physicians have a very high burnout rate. So it's really cool when you guys are trained or educated that you do need to take care of yourselves first.
Right.
Like one of the things that we talk about in the Plant Chicks Tribe, which is a large online community of women. We cater towards women on their plant-based journey. But one of the things we talk about is first love yourself. Why?
Yeah.
Love yourself. Because we have to take care of ourselves first before we can take care of the loved ones that we have around us.
So that's very interesting. So I do a lot of public speaking, and I do a lot of lectures both to med schools, to, you know, residency programs, you know, conferences, things like that. And over the past couple years now, I have incorporated almost a physician heal thyself segment in the talk.
Nice.
And this came about. I was speaking in Champaign, Illinois, to a group of cardiologists about preventing, treating, and reversing heart disease with a plant-based diet. And it came between the stent talk and the drug talk, right? But so at the end of the talk, you know, someone raised their hand and said, well, that was a great talk and the evidence was strong, but, you know, how do we get our patients to change? And it really hit me. I said, you know, it has to start with us, because they had a breakfast buffet that morning when I walked in for the doctors. You know, what was on it? Bacon, cheese omelets, donuts, you know, on and on. And I said, you know, if you counsel the patient yesterday afternoon about healthy eating, I don't even care how you define it, right? American Heart Association, low fat, DASH diet, Mediterranean, plant-based, whatever, just pick one, right? And that patient wandered in here this morning, they're not going to believe a word you say. And you know why? Because you don't believe this is important. And until you believe this is important and you lead a lifestyle consistent with your message, no one's going to believe you. And when I started to kind of think through that, there's some really fascinating research around that. About 50% of physicians are overweight or obese. It's less than the 75% of the general population. But when a physician is overweight or obese, it changes the patient perception of the physician. It decreases trust. They're less likely to listen. They're less likely to take the advice. They're less likely to take the pills they prescribe, on and on. But even more fascinating is it changes the doctor's perception of the patient. So a study looked at obese patients, so BMI greater than 30. If the doctor's BMI was greater than the patient's, the diagnosis of obesity showed up in the chart 7% of the time. Oh. If the doctor's BMI was less than the patient's, it showed up 95% of the time.
Wow.
So it changes our perceptions of our patients when we are not healthy, right? Mm-hmm. There's also lots of evidence that if you don't cook healthy, you don't talk to your patients about cooking. If you don't exercise, you don't talk to your patients about exercise. Only about 50% of physicians meet the minimum daily recommendations of 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week. Only 95% of physicians feel like nutrition counseling is important. Only 14% feel qualified to give it. And so, so I review all of these statistics, and so one of the take homes is this talk about what it means to be healthy. Where this needs to start is not with your patient; they start with you, right? Because to your point, I mean, if we don't heal ourselves, if we don't take care of ourselves, it's going to be much more difficult for our patients to listen. And that's, for me personally, I mean, having been through this change, and I'm obviously pretty passionate about this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Patients, they will listen, and, people are surprised. They say, well, what percent of your patients, get on the program? I would say more than 50%.
And are you finding that most of your patients come in an acute situation where they are like, they're bad, they're sick, they tore their meniscus, or they just had a heart surgery or whatever, like it's super bad and they want to fix it right away? Or they've heard a little bit of talk about this plant-based lifestyle? What can they do?
So it's interesting. Most of them come in. So about half the patients probably come in because they want to make changes, and their primary care, they're on insulin or metformin. They have type 2 diabetes, and they go to their primary care doctor and they say, I read Dr. Barnard's book about reversing diabetes, and I read Dr. Greger's book about how not to die, and I've seen videos, and I saw Forks Over Knives, and I want to get off all these meds. And the doctor says, we can't do that because those people are all quacks and it doesn't work. So they come to us specifically to help manage the behavior change. Okay. So that's about half the patients. Some of them have been through a more recent, more critical kind of thing, heart attack and such as that. But a lot of them are just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Or they've seen the results in a neighbor or a coworker who have had tremendous success, and they want to do that, model that behavior. Probably more interesting are the ones who come in just because they're assigned to us by their insurance plan, or they've got an acute respiratory infection, and we happen to have an opening, and so they come in and establish care, and they have no idea what we do, and they come back in for a physical. And
like, what just happened?
Right. Well, and it's because, again, our healthcare system operates in this paradigm of illness and treatment. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we have a perception, most patients have a perception, if I'm not sick, I must be well. Right. So patients come in and I say, how you doing? They say, oh, I'm doing great. My blood pressure is great on this pill, and my cholesterol is great on that pill, and my sugars are great on this pill. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not sick, but by no one's definition would they be considered well. Right. And so painting this, presenting them with this alternative reality about what it really means to be well with the discussion I outlined earlier. It's pretty interesting is that, you kind of see the lights starting to go off, and sometimes it takes a while. But when they finally, if I can get them just to test drive it for a few months, so the results are so amazing that most of it sticks, right?
Yeah, they feel so good. They don't want to go back.
Exactly. That's right.
So circling back, you had said that, like, towards the beginning of this conversation, you'd said that some of the endocrinologists back in St. Louis were saying, oh, that Dr. Loomis, he's a quack. You need to be taking medication. What happens for the people that are not in the DC metro area and they're very interested in following a plant-based diet? They're seeing their doctor and the doctor's saying, this is crazy. You can't heal your body through plant-based nutrition, but they're not able to come up and see you guys. What's some good information that we could share with our physicians?
Sure. So both Plantrition Project and actually PCRM both have directories of plant-based doctors nationwide. And so plantbaseddocs.org and I think plantbaseddoctors.org are both great resources to find new dietitians and physicians who are, near. I have patients that travel here. We get patients from out of town all the time. I still have patients that fly here once a year from St. Louis. They may still have a local physician that takes care of their colds and sprained ankles, but they come here for lifestyle management. And we're just now starting to really expand our presence using telehealth. Where we're using we have this would be a medical visit.
Yeah.
Because most of what we're doing is deep prescription. Right.
Yeah, that was actually brought up at the at the Plantrition Project last year, that physicians aren't really you're trained on how to prescribe medication, but you're not really trained on how to de-prescribe them.
Yeah, so I give a talk on that actually to patients, and the point is I tell them that when you're done with this, you're going to know more about this than your doctor knows, and so I give them very specific kind of guidelines about how to think about de-prescription, how to answer how to answer your doctor's questions.
That is huge.
Yeah.
And Bree is wanting to know what the websites are. It's pcrm.org or .com?
Yeah, well, PCRM is .org, but let me see. The plant-based docs one is not. It's not. You can get to it through the PCRM. Hold on a second.
It might be, plantbaseddocs.com, and there is a plant-based doctors. There's one that's .com and one that's .org.
Yeah, so the Plantrition one is plantbaseddocs, doc.com. And I think the other one is plantbaseddoctors.org.
Perfect. Okay, good. I will put links to this when I do share it. So I'll include all of those things. One of the things that you've been talking about also, so I was trained as a registered dietitian, practiced for several years, and the dietitian that trained me was actually vegan. Back in the early 90s, I was vegetarian. I couldn't really be vegan. But in the early 90s, she introduced me to your physician, Dr. Neil Bernard, Dean
Ornish.
Yeah. And it's been amazing seeing how everything has changed. And now CMS is reimbursing for the Ornish lifestyle program, right? So it's fascinating to see it's crazy to see how long it's taken all of this to happen, but it's also beautiful to see the changes that are finally occurring.
I agree completely. Yeah, still a lot of work to do though, but we're getting there, slow but sure. ACLM has really done a great job. Really starting to take a hard look at some of the policy stuff around reimbursement and things like that, because recognizing this fundamental importance of lifestyle medicine. So.
Absolutely. So let's just change gears slightly. I want you to talk a little bit about the two documentaries that you've been in. You've been in Game Changers, and I also heard that you're in Code Blue. Dr.
I haven't seen Code Blue. I know that she was here filming, and I don't know if I made the final cut or not.
You did make the final cut because there was a showing in Dallas, and I was Plant Chicks Tribes. They're there, and Marcia was like, "Dr. Loomis is in that one too."
So,
like, oh
so Code Blue is about this the medical education system primarily, and this lack of training, so we here at Barnard Medical Center, actually, we teach here. I'm on the faculty at GW University and also in med school, and also the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences, which is the military med school in Bethesda, which trains all of the Army, Navy, Air Force doctors. And so we have students from both who rotate through here. We have residents from the preventive medicine program at USIS who come through, and then we sponsor students from all over the world.
How long do they come in for? Is it just one course, or is
So
it
the GW students come once a week for about a year, actually. They all go plant-based, by the way. I think 90% of the GW students who have come through end up going plant-based by the end. Most of the rotations are a week or two. Some are a little bit longer. If anyone's interested, if you're a healthcare professional, you can find some information on our website, which is barnardmedical.org. But Game Changers is, I had the privilege of working with James Wilkes and Luis Ahoyas, who's the director, and that's really been such an amazing thing. I don't know if you've seen it. You've seen it, right?
I did at Plant Nutrition Project.
Yeah, it's just such a great movie, and it is a game changer. And what's interesting about that, historically people came to plant-based diets mainly through veganism, right? Which is really an ethical movement around not eating animals and not, wearing animals and products tested on animals. And then Forks Over Knives came out in 2011, and that really opened a lot of people's eyes about the health benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. Now, not necessarily vegan, because there's a lot of unhealthy vegan food, but a whole food plant-based diet. And then a couple years later, Cowspiracy came out about the environmental consequences of how we raise food, in particular, animals. And so you had a lot of people coming in through, through the environment. And then What the Health came out, which kind of reinforced the whole plant-based health aspects. I think that really appealed to a much younger crowd. Interestingly enough, my middle son, who's a sophomore in college, saw this huge transformation of my own self. But it wasn't until he saw What the Health that he finally decided to go plant-based.
That happens way too many times.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
But now I think there's a fourth way into plant-based nutrition, and that's performance. I mean, every single day you read in the paper or in the news about some high-end athlete, professional athlete who has gone plant-based, and every single one of them you talk to will tell you the same thing, and it's about their ability to recover. It's amazing how much better they get, and how less time they spend in the training room, and when they do to get injured, how fast they recover from the workouts and injury. And so James Wilkes was a MMA fighter, and he won Ultimate Fighter 11, and he got injured, and during his rehab process, he started to really do a deep dive into nutrition and what's the best diet to help him recover. And he found out that Roman gladiators were plant-based. And so he went on this mission. So he sought out athletes and professionals like myself, and put together this amazing documentary about the kind of to dispel this myth, especially the bro science, I would say, in the gym about protein and meat and whey protein and what it means to be manly and how you get strong and on and on. And I mean, it's just such an amazing film. And one of the things I think is they did an amazing job about was making it evidence-based. And so if you noticed in the film, every time when I make a statement on the screen at the bottom, there's the scientific reference that backs up the statement that I just made. And when in the editing process, I sent James, 3 pages. There's a bunch of B-roll that's not in the film, but every single statement I made, I sent James a scientific reference. So there was probably 50 to 100, scientific references that they have to back up what we, not just me, but all the experts. Right. So when to be 100% sure that the film is based in science and evidence. And I got to meet some amazing people. I've been working with Dotsie Bausch, who won the Olympic.
He's incredible.
Yeah, won an Olympic gold medal and silver medal in team pursuit cycling in 2012 at age 39, the oldest woman to ever both either qualify for the Olympic team, much less to win a medal. And so she's got a project called Switch for Good.
Yes.
Switchforgood.org, which is about, it's a switch and then a 4 with a number, about encouraging athletes to go dairy free as a start. And so I've done a lot of work with her and done some touring and lecturing. And it's just amazing the group of people involved in that project. And so hoping that film will be out soon. I talked to James a couple weeks ago. Still probably this spring, I think, is what they're shooting for.
Well, you guys, you do not want to miss it when it finally comes out, too. And I do want to open up the mics for everyone to see if anyone has any questions. If you guys can raise your hand, or if you just want to unmute yourself and ask a question for Dr. Loomis, that would be awesome. And if no one asks questions, I can definitely ask some questions. One of the things I wanted to ask you about too, one of the things that was really stuck out in my mind from Game Changers was the 3 young athletes with their penile health. I'm like,
yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
So there's a sequence in the film where they took 3 young college athletes who were clearly, these guys are in great shape. I think one was a baseball player and a football player, basketball player, whatever. And they, so men naturally will have erections at night, and that's normal. And so there's actually a device you can measure how hard and how long the erection is. So they gave them all 3 meat burritos and studied them, and then they gave them a couple nights later. They gave them all plant-based burritos. And I think on average they were 200 or 300%. They were like 40% harder and for like 300% longer, and they were all blown away. And my favorite comment from that was, I guess on Valentine's Day, I'm not taking my date to the steakhouse, right?
Exactly.
And which was great.
Which is perfect timing for today too.
Exactly. Tomorrow. That's exactly right. And I think that I think it gets to the root, though. The reason that happens is one of the reasons that a plant-based diet is so powerful for an athlete, because it's about blood flow, right? And we know that endothelial function, which is the lining of the blood vessels which open and close, is nitric oxide helps drive that. And foods like kale and beets in particular have a very potent effect on dilating blood vessels. And I've certainly experienced that myself. I mean, it's crazy. As you mentioned, I'm training for an Ironman triathlon at age 50, almost 60. I remember the first marathon I ran in medical school. It probably took me 3 or 4 weeks to fully recover from that, the soreness and stiffness. The second marathon I ran was 35 years later, and I was running 2 days later. Right.
Wow.
I did a half marathon, a half Ironman, 6 hours. That's a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and then a half marathon. Again, running 2 or 3 days later with minimal soreness and stiffness. And so my ability to recover now, as I'm really starting to get into the more rigorous part of my training, it's really incredible. And beets and kale are a fundamental part. And then I use a lot of turmeric and ginger and cinnamon, as anti-inflammatories, blueberries. And back to that sequence, it's only recently been recognized that erectile dysfunction is really in the canary in the coal mine for heart disease, because the root cause of erectile dysfunction for most men is in fact endothelial dysfunction. And when you restore endothelium, and that's also the root cause of heart disease. Dr. Esselstyn talks a lot about this. So, it's really amazing. So
no, it's amazing. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about that correlation. We have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Someone is asking, they've been eating plant-based for a year and they're having a hard time losing weight. Do you have any suggestions or questions that you?
So a couple things. you know, sometimes people kind of conflate, if you will, vegan and plant-based, and there's a lot of, you have to be very careful, especially with things like edible oils. You know, the Impossible Burger would probably be the best example of that, right?
Mhm.
Impossible Burger is vegan. People love it. It's certainly better for the environment, certainly better for the animals, but it may not be better for you because it's 30% fat,
Correct.
which is from, and it's from coconut oil, which is all saturated fat. So, you know, I think the keys to losing weight on a whole food plant-based diet is to really focus on nutrient density. Chef AJ talks about this a lot.
Yeah.
About really, you have to be very careful with nut butters and seeds and edible oils and even avocados in the short run. Now, the other part of that, you have to exercise, right? You have to empty your gas tank before you fill it back up. And so oftentimes when people are struggling, and then thirdly, you need to be sure you don't have another metabolic issue like thyroid problems or whatever. But oftentimes when people are struggling to lose weight, human beings, we are not very good at all about judging the nutritional quality of our food.
Right.
We routinely will underestimate the calories and overestimate the healthfulness. So there's programs like Chronometer, which I advise patients to use. It's a little tedious, but it's a way that you can track your food intake. I like it because it has a great barcode reader, and then it has a really robust recipe builder, which you can save and portion out. The goals I shoot for are greater than 50 grams of fiber, less than 10% of your total calories is fat.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, that 75 to 150 minutes of exercise a day. And if you focus on those three things, oftentimes the weight will, you know, you'll start to overcome that. Oftentimes with exercise too, people start to lose weight and they reach a plateau. Mm-hmm. And that's because they're exercising, say, to time and not heart rate. When you first start an exercise program, you know, the amount of calories we burn is based on the amount of work we do. We can estimate that through heart rate. If you start out, you know, jogging a mile or two, and it takes you 30 minutes, and then you're doing that same 30 minutes, well, your heart rate's not going to go up after the first 6 weeks because you're in better shape, which is a good thing. So really paying attention to your heart rate, you know, things like that. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And we're coming up on the hour, and I know you have patients this afternoon, so I want to be very mindful of your time. So Dr. Loomis, how do people find you? Should they want to find you on social media, come see you for a visit?
Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of information about the practice on barnardmedical.org. I'm on Facebook. I don't mind people. Don't ask me any medical questions on there. You know, don't type me a message. I'm having chest pain. What should I do? But feel free to friend me there. I'm on Instagram, although I'm still learning that. I think it's JF Loomis MD. And same with, and then I'm on Twitter again. I mainly use Facebook, and my Facebook posts are around, this is what I ate tonight. Here's the recipe. I ran this far today. Here's some research. It's mainly about just education stuff. So
that is awesome. And I want to try and pull up an app that I have that PCRM put out. You guys have a 21-day plant-based
21-day kickstart. Yep, 21 kickstart, which is free.
It's a beautiful app. You guys have videos, you have recipes, everything. And of course, I can't find it on my phone. But I will add the link to the 21-day kickstart.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
So thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Loomis. I cannot thank you enough. And have an amazing rest of your day.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
All right.
Goodbye.